Welcome to the Dad Report, a podcast for dads, by dads, about dad stuff.
Join us as we sit down and have meaningful conversations with friends, family, and coworkers.
We will talk about life, family, and so much more while working towards a goal of creating a healthy idea of what it means to be a dad. All right, welcome to the Dad Report. Now in season 2, the upgraded Dad Report. Chad, how are you doing tonight?
Season 2.0. Hey, Justin, I am doing great. It's good to see you as always.
It's good to see you. Well, we have a really exciting guest for tonight, Chad. Before we get there, you came loaded with a dad joke.
Yes, I do have a dad joke, and it's kind of meta, Justin. My dad joke is about dad jokes.
Oh, no.
So, without further ado, Justin, where do you store dad jokes?
There's a pun in here, and I know there's a pun because there's always a pun, but
Always.
I don't know it. What's the pun?
You store dad jokes in the database.
Oh, I should have seen that one coming.
So yeah, and I always laugh at my own jokes. I know I probably shouldn't, but you know,
No.
I get a kick out of them.
That's hilarious. I thought you were gonna go for the when does a joke become a dad joke? When it becomes apparent. Because that one's always funny too. Well, tonight we have a guest with us who is a first on the show. He is a grandfather. He is a retired a pastor. He is an author of several books. He's been on some podcasts. We're really excited to glean some wisdom from him and get the chance to talk with him. Please welcome Robin T. Jennings to the show. Robin, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, Justin. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Robin, welcome. We're excited to have you. As Justin mentioned, you were the first grandfather we've had on the show, so we're breaking new ground here. This is great. And anything else you'd like to maybe introduce about yourself, just to let our listeners know just a little bit more about you?
No, I think you've got it. I mean, grandfather is enough. I mean, in terms of we've got 6 grandkids.
Okay,
Justin.
Wow.
And as I mentioned, I just babysat the 3-year-old today, and so I'm a little tired. It's nighttime. I'm ready to go to bed.
well, we'll try and not
in all
keep you
seriousness,
too
yeah,
late.
that's right. But no, in all seriousness, I think one of the things that has been fun has been retirement. Obviously, I love the church and doing what I was doing, and yet at the same time now, the schedules, the calendars, what I choose to do and not to do now have been a gift. Every day is opens up with that kind of promise, and really found great joy and excitement in it.
That's awesome. How long were you pastoring for?
Over 40 years, about 35 years at one church. So
Wow.
a long time in a place far away.
In the Episcopal Church, right?
In the Episcopal Church. Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in the Episcopal Church.
Really?
Yes, sir.
And what happened to you, Chad?
Oh no.
Well,
there wasn't a period at the end of that sentence. There was kind of
the
a comma.
Reformed guys got him.
Yes, I am currently in a non-denominational church here in Jacksonville, Florida, but I still have my faith, right?
Sure.
I still do go to church. So that sounded very ominous.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Dun,
Good.
dun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh goodness.
So.
Well, Robin, what can you tell us? Actually, I'm very curious about so I don't know a whole lot about the Episcopal Church. Can you give us a brief flyover of like your stint in ministry, something you learned and gleaned from it? First of all, thank you for running that race for as long and as faithfully as you did. I mean, for many pastors, that's impressive just on its own accord, and to also run it without a major moral collapse like we're currently seeing in this current generation of pastors is also incredible.
Thank you. I would say over the say 35 years at this particular parish, every 5 years, in maybe 5 to 7 years, something was going on either within my life or within the church that required, I hesitate to say me to be there, but me in that place, in that space at that time. And so that became less a challenge about time or looking at my watch or calendar or listening to the beat of another drum, something like that. Who else would love to have me? And none of that really was an issue as much as what was right before my eyes. And I guess it was more a bloom where you're planted kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's about as far as deep as I can go with the length of the time or the ministry itself as it unfolded was just that. And I'm going to add a but here, but there's God, in the Spirit and Jesus leading the way. I mean, it wasn't yours truly. And I that's where I really got caught up, and was it less me as it was. It's almost like sailing, the wind was blowing the sail and I just kept steering it or trying not to crash.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Whichever metaphor works.
Yeah. That's cool. All right. Can you talk to us about parenting a little bit? Like we said, you're a grandfather, which also means by extension you were a father or are a father. I shouldn't say
by
were.
extension. Yeah.
Tell my kids that.
Yes. Tell my kids that. Four boys.
Oh, and, my goodness.
Yeah, that's what we're saying to you, Justin. Good luck with the girl. We and not to be sexist here, but the boys, it was just nothing. And here again, you may want to edit this out, but my wife came into the room one day and there was like a football and a basketball and a soccer ball and a tennis ball, all in the one room, and they're all throwing them and kicking them at each other. She walked in the room and she said, balls, all I see are balls. Well, the kids thought that was the funniest thing they ever heard.
I'm not editing that out. I mean,
yeah, but that's boy. Okay, that's boys.
That's middle school humor. That's great. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
So
I'm one of three. Yeah.
Yep.
But with that said, I think there was again a calling as far as being a parent that was something that I caught hold of early on with the boys and with their growing up and they're maturing now. I can go on and on with each one has a story to tell, but I think it's their story. I'd love to talk about them all day long, but they'd go, Dad, you shouldn't have said that, or this kind of thing. And I mean, they're still kids, right? But two of them are here in Louisville, where I'm in Kentucky.
Okay.
And so with that, they've got their grandkids, and that's why I got the 3-year-old today, Chad, that I was talking about. So there, and not just my wife had him for most of the day, and I picked up there later on, but when she kind of left the house. but it's fun. It's been fun. It really has.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're there too. You and your wife to give them support. I know that's one thing that we kind of take for granted sometimes is living in the same city with with several of our grandparents. And so that definitely does help.
Well, and I call them the boys. They're now 35, 40, 45 years old. So they've grown up, but in ways, in certain ways. I mean, thank God for the daughter-in-laws. I mean, they've done. I've often said
they bring balance.
You married them. They're yours. Don't come to me. That kind of thing.
Great.
But with that said, their sense of humor during all this COVID stuff. I was going out to one of the grocery stores shopping, and Dad, you can't do that. You can't do that. You got to wear a mask. You got to do this. And then another one said to me, I was non-essential. Well, of course, I about clubbed him. But with that, then he drops his kids off and his dog off and, all that kind of stuff. And so, come on, but so again, it's fun. The door's open and we love nothing better than seeing them and getting together with them whenever we can.
Yeah, that's an important part of community for sure. We moved back up to Atlanta to be near grandparents and that support system. And now our grandparents are moving to I shouldn't say mine. My in-laws are moving, so Amelia's grandparents are moving to within 10 minutes of us.
Good.
So that'll be real helpful for days where we're swamped. We need a date night, all that kind of stuff.
Call them essential, will you, Justin?
Oh, absolutely.
They're essential.
Yeah.
When date night's
when they need a babysitter, you become very essential,
especially
right?
when it's like
And
$50 an hour now. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Gee, it keeps going up.
Oh man, I plan on employing youth group kids for babysitting. They'll do it cheap.
Yeah.
15-year-olds don't know what money
Who
is.
needs service hours?
They don't know what gas is. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
If they need service hours,
Hmm.
what they do,
Yeah.
Or is that one of those classes where it's like the Eagle Scouts?
No, they need it for high school.
Really? I never needed
Yeah.
service hours
Yeah.
in high school.
Oh, really? I did.
No. Well,
Huh.
I'm sorry, Chad.
Well,
That's funny.
but yeah, there's several things they do where they need service hours. So yeah. Okay. Who knows? Maybe that's a regional thing. I don't know.
Yep.
No, not at all. It's here as well. And
Okay. Justin, you just escaped somehow.
Maybe Gwinnett County, or maybe it's because I was already doing some after school stuff. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I honestly don't. Either that, or I've blocked it out of my memory because I did that with a lot of things, and I was completing that task through church or something. That's always possible as well.
Yeah, that is possible.
I know it did for a Kroger scholarship. So,
Okay.
because I was serving in middle school ministry, which, speaking of serving in middle school ministry, next generation. So Robin, one of the big reasons that you've been recommended and given over to us here at the Dad Report, aside from obviously the great wisdom you have as a dad and a father, is you are kind of keeping that heartbeat alive by wanting to pour into the next generation through mentoring.
Yes.
So go ahead and talk to us about that and what that looks like for you right now in this season of life you're in.
Sure. It's in one respect multifaceted. There's a lot to it, and it obviously depends on each person you're talking to and working with. It is different from like spiritual direction or from counseling or coaching, is that really almost from the get-go. Well, first of all, there's no agenda. And from my standpoint, now from the person I'm the mentee or the person that I'm talking to or working with, it's what do they want to talk about? What is their objective? What would they like to see happen? So it's set in that context. And also, I don't think there again would be something that would be of concern in terms of it's confidential. But the permission from the church staff is always important, that you are involved in talking and working with this person. And with that said too, the idea almost from the beginning is, and I call it vocation, the calling, where God seems to be calling you at this certain point and place in your life. And that really is the stepping off place of our discussion. They may be wanting to talk about other things, but as I said earlier, I don't have an agenda except to bring in God to the conversation from the beginning, so that we're not just twisting our thumbs or turning our thumbs or whatever you do with them, but you're really helping them to recognize that they have a spiritual life, and that it's a life that is now going through some sort of a transition, transformation, change, growth, whatever word you want to begin to apply to it, or that they find is there's perhaps, I hope not a crisis, it's not that kind of thing as much as really just a phase, a stage. I'm doing some work now in Celtic spirituality. I don't know if you're
That's fascinating.
with that out of Ireland. Yeah, but here they Saint Bridget, one of the patron saints, everyone knows Saint Patrick. This is Bridget. Talks about she was born, her mother was out in the field milking cows and churning butter and bringing up heavy pails, but what I didn't tell you is she was 9 months pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
She's walking up a steep hill. She's coming up through the door and standing on the threshold, and she delivers Bridget. Well, one of the principles, or not principles, but certainly one of the themes that runs through Celtic spirituality is that of a threshold. And Bridget is the patron saint, and the one you turn to when you're going through a threshold in life. For Bridget, it was the difference between winter and spring, between being inside her mama's belly and coming out. That threshold was very important to her. her father was pagan, her mother was Christian. So, she saw these thresholds beginning to take shape in her life, and she became a patron saint of healing, which I could talk more and more about. But all these things get, I'm bringing back your Episcopal training, Chad, but all this brings back, the place and the role of the twists and turns that go on in life. So with that said, that certainly is a beginning point to say, where are you?
Wow. So in terms of, working with the next generation, I think, Justin and I, along with all parents out there, we say thank you. Especially with somebody, at least in terms of parenthood, has graduated their children kind of beyond some of those younger years, to have someone of your wisdom and expertise that is still involved. I think that's amazing. What is it that keeps you there? Is it just that's really where you feel the Lord's calling on your life, or is there something kind of specific you can point to that that kind of keeps you in that place?
In one sense, it and I'm not going to say keeps me young. It makes me feel old. I mean, as I listen to these kids talk, are you kidding me?
Oh man!
But and maybe this is a response to your question, Chad. Is the legacy factor kind of gets pulled in, and I realize the hourglass with the proverbial sand, it's moving faster and faster. I mean, it's not that time is running out, but I don't want to sound like Mick Jagger and time is on my side. It's not. But with that, it's not limited either. I mean, once again, our life is in God. So, okay, I'm fine. And so the time that I have, I really want to address this importance of faith, and not only the spiritual life, but the religious life. And the book that I wrote on the letter to the church and the next generation, it's filled with a lot of demographics and figures from, Barna Research. Are you all familiar with?
I've heard of Barna Research. Yes.
Okay. Well, David Kinnaman, that's head of it, good guy. Anyways, they will talk about, for instance, perhaps you've heard of the nuns.
Yes.
It's not the divine order of the sacred nuns.
Different nun,
none of the above. And so when it comes to religion, not Christian, not Jewish, not Hindu, not Islam, okay. So what are you? Well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. That's kind of the approach. And what's getting my heart pounding is that I'm religious and I'm also spiritual. Is that okay? Can we still talk?
Yeah.
And because you get these projections. Oh, he's a minister, or you get all this transference thrown on you, and he's going to be judgmental or this or that. But you sort of gently walk into it with a sense of I'm religious, but I'm also spiritual. And let's talk about your spiritual life, and let's talk about the spirit or spirits. What can you describe that spirit that's you're following, or that I saw a bird the other day in the tree, and great, where's the bird now?
Yeah.
I'm being a little facetious, but you see what I'm getting at? I mean, it's those clouds were so pretty, or the sunset, just I'll never forget, well, that's great. Tell me about now the hurricane that's coming. If you like nature so much, no, I'm sorry, but I realize you guys are from Florida, and but you see, I mean, it's let's talk about the spirit. And by the way, have you ever heard of the Holy Spirit? And that's a discussion. So this, again, back to legacy, these are the kinds of things. And I guess you guys know I was a preacher, and so I like to talk. And so you're going to have to jump in, because
that's okay.
You pushed the button,
okay.
Justin. You pushed it. Yeah,
I did. No, it's okay. I like listening.
All right, hang in there. You're not falling asleep then. But where I almost also I think is important is that with respect to legacy, I don't want my legacy. I can tell you that now, to be a cell phone. and I don't want it to be playing video games with the kids. I mean, that's what they, and I don't want them to all hear that, but I just, please, no technology. Let's go for a walk. Let's play some
Yeah.
ball. Let's anything. Okay. So that's where my heart is.
That's
You
good.
that is good. That is good. And like I said when I started out on this line, just kind of from all the parents, thank you.
Okay.
Because I have, so I have I mentioned to you earlier, I have a 16-year-old son, and he just graduated high school, and so he is kind of in this transition,
Yeah.
right, where he is, so he's kind of young, he's 16, so he's living at home, but he's starting to work, going to school, some of these things, and kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, I still live at home, but I'm also trying to become my own person now, becoming a man now,
Sure.
all of these things. So in you mentioned about some of the books you've written, and one of those books is a book on James, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of the one of the topics in that book is really about um, mentorship.
Mhm.
And I just wondering, maybe if you could talk a little bit about mentorship. I kind of am of the opinion that um, maybe it might be a little bit of a lost art, although
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not a very well-formed opinion, maybe just based on what I can observe. But I was wondering if you could talk about that. Feel free to talk about the book, or just mentorship in general, and kind of how you see that, and if you have some goals in that, or just
Sure.
wherever you'd like to take this.
Okay. Loaded question.
Yeah.
First off, but my not knee-jerk response, but well, here, Chad, coming out of the Episcopal Church, tell me what men do in the Episcopal Church. They go to church. Maybe they're asked to be an usher. Perhaps they might be a reader for the readings. Maybe
Sure.
they'll count money. They may serve on the vestry, the governing board on the vestry. I mean, it's kind of not predictable, but limited in term. And by the way, then there's also bake sales going on, and clothes drives, and all kinds of other guilds and things, and Bible studies for the women, and this and that. Not, again, separating, but so this is something I really encourage men to give some thought to, and begin to develop a practice, certainly within their church, if they can not necessarily read my book, but to begin to develop a strategy with their staff, and identify, like, some of these kids that are leaving high school, going to college. That first year in college can be a real buster. I mean, it can, it's
Absolutely.
I think the hardest year and then that year after college is another huge transition. And those are a lot of the kids that we're working with now in our church. I don't know if you're familiar with Fellows Initiative. It's a national organization that does just this.
Okay.
Begins
No.
to identify. It's a whole program in and of itself. But this is all, again, that was endorsed on the back of my book, and there's an interview with the director at our church who's doing it. But all of this is a way that I think begins to lay the framework, the groundwork, the foundation for being mentors, training and equipping mentors, and then identifying those young people that would be interested in spending some time with a person that's mature, a person of faith. Mature doesn't necessarily mean old, however, it certainly can, but who's been around the block, and who's willing to not necessarily take some hits, but willing to listen to some of the issues that are at work, and also knowing where the danger parts are. Again, I don't want to make this just sound like counseling, but to know our limits. And that, I think, is an important aspect of being a mentor, but also the ability to ask questions, to allow a conversation to go. And more importantly, I think, to develop some kind of a partnership or a friendship, a soul friend, with this young person, because they really are looking to older people, but they don't want to see their boss or their teacher or someone that is going to, a parent figure sometimes, you name it. They're looking for some person, but they don't know how to talk about authority or what that means. And so here again, they're seeking and developing in their own way their identity and what it means to be a person of faith.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's
That's
great.
a lot. That's good
Right.
though. That's really good. And I like that it's more than just a counseling and that you're looking to develop. I feel like the word relationship is prevalent in what you're seeking to do in this fellows initiative and these young people. I mean, I am one of the young people that looks for older role models and people who I can talk to. One just tried to call me while we're recording this, and that's how I know
Sure.
Chad. And it is people. I try to surround myself with people who are more mature and with wisdom. I know this is going to cut a little bit into your book, but is there any way you could tell us maybe what some of the, even if it's just one, what are some of the practical things from the book of James that you were using to write on this topic?
Of James, everything. I don't want to say everything is practical, but I just love that letter. Is that what you're talking about? The letter of
Yeah,
James?
yeah, the
I mean,
letter
what
of
you- What you
James.
want to hear about?
Yeah, yeah.
Because where do you, I mean, he still takes my breath away, that letter. And also the interest in it. What started it for me in one sense was it came out probably in the early turn of the century, of the 21st century. And there was this discovery. They thought of his bones, his ossuary. I don't know if you
that is cool.
caught this in their introduction. Yeah. But it headlines and all, and very exciting. And James, brother of Jesus, son of Joseph. I mean, this is how it said on the inscription and all this. And they went through all the dating of it and all that. And then, by the way, it was a lawsuit that never ended. I mean, in terms of forgery and all this kind of thing. So with that said, it also, what it did is it kind of launched James in terms of the public view, like, who is this guy, and is he really a brother of Jesus, and is this a scandal? Oh, the scandal is he an older brother, and how could that be with the Virgin Mary, all this kind of stuff you get into. But what caught my attention more than anything else was, and now this is scholars going back and forth, and where it's going to all end up, who knows, but they're now looking at his letter as being one of the earliest letters written in scripture, that they're dating it back to in the early 40s, which puts him before Paul. And so then some of this
right after Jesus. So
right after
it would make sense that he writes stuff down immediately.
Oh my gosh. I mean, walking hand in hand with Jesus.
Yeah.
And I mean, this eyewitness. And in fact, to get away from, is he a brother or stepbrother or cousin or all this kind of stuff where they go with it, is I just call him a living link or an eyewitness. I mean, because that's what he is. And so those words then just jump off the page for me. And again, I think scholars or theologians down through the ages really have looked at James and questioned the letter from the standpoint of what we call Christology. I mean, there's not enough Jesus in it. What's this? What's the value of this book? Well, as you read the letter, as you read it, I mean, it drips with Jesus and with the Sermon on the Mount. And I think there's some like 57 verses out of a 5-chapter letter that they say directly can correspond to what is in the Gospels. So here it's not only eyewitness, but oral tradition, and all this is so close to what James is writing about. It's the real deal. How's that?
I love it. I'm gonna have to get your book and
go get it. No, read James. Go to James.
That
first.
too.
Start there.
Well, I've read James.
Okay. Good.
I need to do it
That's
again.
Good to hear, Justin.
I need to do it again for sure.
Yeah.
I guess part of it's the kind of Bible nerd. I start seminary. Well, by the time listeners listening to this, I've already started. But
wow,
here in the fall.
Wow, he's committed now.
Justin, Now,
Yes,
do I
sir.
call you Reverend or Doctor?
No,
or
no,
what do
no.
I call you?
It's just an MDiv. It's just a master's of divinity. It's okay. Yeah, no, please
So
don't.
you're going to be a master in divinity. Yeah.
That's what they'll tell me. For me,
Yeah.
it's tools in a toolbox. It's just a better way
That's
to
right.
understand and then therefore turn around and explain scripture, teach Jesus, teach the gospel. But
Justin,
some of that,
if I can interrupt, you didn't catch my humor. I said, so you're going to be a master in divinity.
yeah,
Have you ever heard of such a thing? I mean, why we call it masters in divinity? No, there's no such thing.
because it's the next degree up from bachelor's.
Yeah, but we're not masters.
That's true.
We don't master. You see, we don't master divinity, Justin. It masters us. Okay. That's where I'm going.
I am convicted.
I'll work with you, Justin.
No, that's great. That's conviction. Wow. Divinity masters us. For those of you who need a tweet out from Robin here, that's it right there.
All right, there you go.
You don't master divinity. Divinity masters you.
That's right.
That's really
Boy,
good.
It does.
Yeah.
It will for you too, Justin.
I'm excited. Yeah,
I am too. I'm excited.
I'm really excited because I get a little nerdy, so I really enjoy the like the heptatic structure.
You can't see Chad rolling his eyes. When you said you get a little nerdy.
I might
Go ahead.
I'm listening. A lot nerdy. Obi-Wan Kenobi and all that.
Yeah.
I need to pull the brim of my hat down further so you can't see my eyes.
Okay.
Chad, are you proud of me? I dug out my 1122 dad hat. But
Cool.
You sure did. It looks great, Justin.
Thanks. So I love finding those patterns of like 7s and 3s and it's what I grew up being told it was called heptatic structure. And so some of that stuff I really just kind of geek out over, and I'm excited for the opportunity to then therefore further geek out. And so that's why I expressed why I would love to read your book, because it sounds like you're putting some of that stuff that I'd really that very specific like detail analyzation, going back and putting the context around not just James being just his brother, but this is the timeline that he wrote it on. So here's the events he would have walked through and lived through, because that's what also helps it go. It just makes it feel more alive. Sometimes I think, especially American Christians, we lose the context of scripture because we're reading it as if it's just this 2,000-year-old document, even though it's alive and it's well and it's active. But we miss it because we're like, oh, cool, David's talking about goats again. Oh, it's another psalm, and we're missing it. We're missing some of the gravity that scripture holds. So that's exciting.
Well, and I could go on with this too, but you go all the way to the cross, and Jesus, behold my mother, behold your son, and James is standing there, but Jesus isn't talking to James. He's talking to John, or the beloved disciple. And so here again, all of a sudden you think, well, what happened to poor old James? Well, James, could have been already by then considered a brother, but at the same time now it's a larger community of faith that is starting to develop and take place. And with Acts, through the power of the Spirit, here goes John and Mary, together, probably forming the first church in Jerusalem. And I have no question about it that James was in Jerusalem. And so that was probably where he worshiped as well at the start. I mean, how cool does all of this go when you start allowing the story to unfold right before your eyes and heart?
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've covered some of this, but I just want to kind of give you the last word here. So Robin, if somebody picks up your book on James, like what's your hope, or what's your prayer for the person that's that's reading that particular book?
And some may depend, of course, on the reason for their picking up the book. If they're probably the last word would be discernment, and one of being attentive and being aware to this place of witness. Okay, Chad, Episcopalians, they're not big on witnessing. And that drove me nuts for 40 years. And I love the church and I love Episcopalians and all that, but come on. who have you talked to about your faith? When do you talk about your faith? Is your faith, oh, it's very private, it's very personal. It's, however, we can talk
The
about
truth, yeah.
politics, and we can talk about sex, and we can talk
Right.
about everything else under the, and did you see Tom Brady? And come on, who are you following? And let's get this conversation on track and going in a way that again bears witness and bears fruit for the kingdom. So do you want me to keep talking, or is that enough of a last word? Or?
Well, let me just let me
I'm
just
looking
say
at
real
you.
quick.
Yeah.
You are not lying about the whole
No.
faith being private
Yeah.
in the Episcopal Church. I got to tell you, even today, I mean, I've been in the same church for like 13 years now, and still I find myself getting caught up in that of saying, okay, you know what, that person, who am I, right?
Yeah.
To what it's the truth. Like, I would want to hear the truth, but
Yeah,
I
sure.
still get I still kind of catch myself wanting to keep that private. And I guess that's, I mean, I grew up in the in the Episcopal Church from birth to,
Yeah.
I don't know, teenager, 15, 16,
Sure.
something like
Sure.
that. So yeah, it gets, I don't know what it is, but it gets ingrained.
It does. And this is again where I think development and growth and transformation and change and all those kinds of words start coming in. And fortunately, that's also when I went to seminary, Justin. I mean, that really helped me learn how to, not to talk, but begin to ask questions or begin to seek. Or I can remember, first going through the doors of seminary thinking I was going to see Peter and Paul. Instead, they were just geeks, or not just regular people. Yeah. And I just thought, what makes this place so special? And so that's where, again, I think the whole, I guess, and it's not just mindset, but I'm going to say the life in the Spirit begins to open up and really come alive. For me in particular, well, this too, Chad. I think when asked to pray, you say, what page number? Right?
Yeah.
And so
Oh, man.
this is part of, and when I talked earlier about every 5-7 years, I think the first 5 or 7 years, I was the rector, Chad, of this church. And rector in Latin means ruler. Did you know that?
I did not.
I did not know.
Well, there you go. Guess
no.
what? I was not the ruler. It's sort of like getting a master's in divinity. I was
That's
not
right.
the master. Yeah. So what I learned quickly is I was not the ruler, but also, even though I was doing everything right and I was saying the right things and I was on the right page and all of that, there was something inside that there was nothing in there. I mean, I shouldn't say nothing in there, but I really needed to do some. I often would use in sermons saying that before, you can do the work of God, God needs to do some work in you. And boy, that just, I don't know when I picked that line up. It worked well in a sermon. Just when you get to preach it. Go ahead. That's a free one I'll give you. But it's so true. And it was so important for me. And so I went off for, had a 3-year, back then it was not necessarily online, but it was like a corresponding course in spiritual direction. And that got me to pray and taught me to pray. And I could go on and on about how important that 3 years was in terms of my formation. And by the way, yours truly had so many important mentors throughout my life and continue to, so as well. So there you go. Is that the last word?
That might be the last word. Yeah,
that might be. Well, we do want to be honoring of your time and that you've had the 3-year-old all day and the fact that you said it's the last word. So we will begin wrapping this up here and say our goodbyes until next time, because it sounds like there's a lot more that we can unpack and dig into in this conversation. But for those people who are listening, who are curious about the things you were talking about, Chad mentioned like that this is not the first book that you've written or are writing. You've got a couple others. go ahead and, sell yourself, pitch yourself. Where can people find you? What might be some of your social medias? And then just give a very brief kind of rundown of your other books that are out there.
Oh, sure. No, I'm Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all, but Amazon's probably just the quickest and easiest to push a button. And you can find all that on my webpage, which is robintjennings.com.
Which we will definitely link to.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay,
it'll be in the show
This
notes.
episode, yeah.
Great, thank you. But the first book, as I think I mentioned to you all, was on Peter and the importance of having a vision for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second book was on Paul and the place of renewal in your life and the renewal of the mind. And here again, that I was writing probably during, well, I know it was during the COVID and the shutdown and all that was, it gave me the time to pull my thoughts together and really respond to some of what I call the eternal questions that Paul asks in his letters. From there, it goes from vision to witness. From vision to renewal to then the witness, and that's where the letter of James just spoke to me so clearly.
Excellent. Well, we will make sure that all your details are in our show notes, whether it's social media, it'll be your books, it'll be your website. We'll also drop that. We had talked before we started recording the landing page where you've kind of given a resource to people who are listening for them to kind of walk through some of these steps practically in their lives as well.
Sure.
So we'll make sure all that is in the show notes.
Great.
I don't have anything else. Thank you so much for being on the show and taking a little bit of time out of your day and sharing with us. We definitely will do our best to stay in touch and
Great.
Hopefully have you back on the show maybe after this new book is not released as of yet, correct?
It just came out. No, it
just came out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll give it some time and then get you back on and see how it's doing, and I'll even attempt to get it and maybe read it because I am really excited about the stuff we talked about earlier.
And get me when you master divinity too. That would be great.
Oh man,
we'll get him, Chad.
we'll get him.
We'll gang up on him. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Robin, it's been great. I know I learned a thing or two about James here that I didn't know before, so that's great and makes me want to check out the book as well. Add it to my stack. I'm so behind on reading. But yeah, thank you. So, like it or not, you are now a friend of the show.
That's right.
And if you decide to return our calls, maybe we'll have you back on.
That'd be great. All right. Blessings on you guys.
All right, Robin. Have a good one.
Thanks, Robin.
Bye.
Great to meet
Bye.
you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. You can support us by sharing the show with your friends and family. Please subscribe, rate, and leave a review.
Want more of The Dad Report? Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and even join the community over on Discord. Don't forget to send us your dad jokes for a chance to be featured on the show.
Remember the words of Billy Graham about fatherhood. A good father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society.
So if you are a dad, we're cheering you on. If you have a dad, be kind to him. And if you know a dad, tell him about our podcast.